Forget it. Let's just get to a safe house.
After stirring up trouble in Europe and the zombie-infested shanty towns of Africa, Resident Evil returns to where it all began in Operation Raccoon City. Playing up the series' decisive shift into shooting, alongside a new squad-based element, Operation Raccoon City charges headlong into old territory in an attempt to dredge up something new. But is this reunion tour through one of gaming's most famous pit stops ultimately worth a visit?
Course not.
Flipping the script on one of the series' most notable events, namely the events of Resident Evil 2, Operation Raccoon City puts players among the ranks of the Umbrella Security Services, an elite strike team tasked with cleaning up company secrets. Idle banter by your merry band of masked marauders infuses the sparse plot with fleeting strains of personality, but with a narrative that fails to capture the campy exuberance of past games, the experience feels like a perfunctory retread. It bears mention that one particular bump in the road engages in a playful game of what if that allows you to retcon the Resident Evil canon, but even altering the events of the past doesn't provide much of a payoff by the time the credits roll.
Your Umbrella Security Service? Upper management must be in a panic if they set you.
Cutting its teeth on the front lines of the recent SOCOM games, developer Slant 6 brings its past experience to bear in the squad-based revision on Resident Evil. Most notably taking cues from the shooting-heavy iterations of the franchise, Operation Raccoon City is littered with an abundance of spare guns, spry undead, and linear waypoint-guided objectives. So hang on to that weird rooster key for now. You won't find much use for it amidst the currents of the game's single-minded pace.
Collect the necessary components.
Where player progression is concerned, the game focuses heavily on the notion of finding and developing a particular role in combat. With a varied selection of class, weapon, and skill loadouts, the game certainly gives players a fully stocked toolbox to play around with, especially when it comes to the unique abilities of each individual class. Temporarily reprogramming zombies amidst the chaos of the Grand Melee sticks out as a notable favorite in the single-player campaign, while infiltrating player ranks via optic camouflage online always makes for a good time. If only the same could be said of the actual campaign. Composed almost entirely of a relentless slog through gauntlets of spongy enemies, it simultaneously lacks the thoughtfulness of the older, more deliberate games, as well as the more imaginative, action-driven set pieces of recent installments. The game hardly takes any opportunities to surprise you amid its sterile slate of scenarios, and the road process of chasing down waypoints doesn't do the campaign any favors in taking the edge off the tedium.
So what's the objective?
Multiplayer offers a brief recourse from the madness with a set of solid match types riffing off classic competitive tropes like Capture the Flag, as well as relatively original ones with a getaway-themed survivor mode. Unfortunately, not even a few frags in Biohazard mode ultimately do much to ameliorate the overarching issues of the game, hampering Operation Raccoon City's footing for an enduring experience past the drudgery of the single-player campaign. For better or worse, at least, the climactic resolution does come a mere 5 hours after deployment, ensuring that this dead horse isn't beaten for long. With no squad commands to speak of, Operation Raccoon City bears little of its developers' tactical warfare DNA, much less Resident Evil's classic tight-fistedness with its literal piles of ammunition at every turn. This action-oriented third-person shooter bears only a passing resemblance to the more recent entries in the series, though even that is a bit of a stretch. In place of the crunchy controls offered by Resident Evil 4's now ubiquitous stop-and-pop gameplay, Operation Raccoon City instead paves its own cobbled path, with a poor facsimile of cover-based controls.
All personnel are to evacuate immediately.
Positioning your character behind cover simply comes down to walking toward an obstacle, a clumsy and inaccurate process that more often leads to bumbling bouts of exposure instead. Melee additionally feels languid and limited, though the game's major malfunction lies in its sense of shooting, which just feels off. Guns circa 1998 apparently carry the stopping power of a pea shooter, and the visual feedback from airing out foes is woefully deficient. Often you may not be able to tell if you're actually hitting things from across the room. It all lends a general feeling of impotence that's at odds with the notion of being part of an elite private military organization. One has to wonder if someone like Wesker felt like a wimp using Umbrella ordnance.
Sounds like a gunfight. The nemesis must be nearby.
It almost seems like the game suffers from every bad cliche in the book. Enemies down to even the lowliest shambler are able to take obnoxious amounts of punishment before finally keeling over. It's often difficult to get a sense of what's happening in the muddled throes of battle, and the AI governing enemy behavior ironically comes a little too close to the brain-dead masses ambling about. Worse yet is your squad mates slip into the same catatonic state. It seems that old Beltway would rather gaze wistfully at your wilting life bar than take a few pot shots at the liquor having his way with you. Apparently resuscitating downed teammates falls well out of the Umbrella pay grade too.
Bertha will always fix you up good.
While the basic business of shooting is no doubt a disappointment, the biggest miss here is the game's unequivocal detachment from anything resembling Resident Evil. Even with egregious consumption levels of green herbs and antiviral medication, very little of the series' signature soul remains in this hollow shell.
How the hell could this happen? This must be Umbrella's warehouse. The hell is all that noise?
Basking its visuals in a sheen of dark leather, cold hues, and expressive moody lighting, Operation Raccoon City, at the very least, looks the part of a Resident Evil game. Trademark creepy crawlies like the Hunter leap and skulk through the streets with ambitious flair, while the environments make appropriate shoutouts to iconic locales such as Raccoon City PD. And though the game does manage to surprise you at times with a few well-placed scares and decently dressed set pieces, it often isn't long until an oblivious enemy or whirling player corpse does its job to bring you back to reality. The occasional sound effect blowout isn't so easy on the ears either.
Command! This is hopeless! We've got to get out of here!
In spite of its novel class-based combat and varied multiplayer, Operation Raccoon City can't shake its one-note campaign and fundamental mechanical problems. For the sake of Resident Evil fans, we'd hope that any further trips back to the series' past would better remember what made it memorable in the first place. We'd sooner bar off the city borders for good instead of slogging through any similar operations in the future.
Stop!